Uh-oh.
Okay, we'll start with this. Unbeaten up-and-comer from right here in the US of A, Mikiah Kreps, is set to return to action April 18th for what will be her very first fight of this year at the Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino, where she's already fought a good amount of times now. It would seem that she is basically based out of Niagara Falls, sporting a professional record of 9 wins with no losses, no draws, 3 knockouts, set to face an opponent that has yet to be announced in the women's super bantamweight division. Super bantamweight, that's where Ellie Scottney reigns as unified WBO and IBF champion. That's where Nazarena Romero has the WBA, and Yemi Mercado has the WBC. That's where this upcoming contest is taking place. As Mikiah continues to amass a respectable resume, the better names on her CV.
The ones that let you know she's a good fighter.
Veteran journeywoman India Smith, who's a lot better than her record suggests. Former U.S. Marine Melissa Odessa Parker and former champion Mayerline Rivas.
These are good fighters. These are all good fighters, and Mikiah Kreps beat them decisively.
Schedule of activity. She fought 2 times in 2023, 2 more times in 2024, and this will be her first fight of this year. Hopefully the first of 2 or the first of 3.
Hopefully this is the year that young Mikiah challenges for an alphabet title.
She's a ways out from fighting for the WBC title as she comes in at number 13 via the World Boxing Council. Comes in a lot higher at number 4 via the World Boxing Organization, the WBO. They've got Mikiah at number 4. Even higher via the World Boxing Association, they've got Mikiah at number 2, right behind former champion Sigolene Lefebvre.
And it's the same with the IBF. They've got Mikiah at number 2 as well. So she's closest to fighting for the WBA and the IBF.
The fighters ranked ahead of her via these ranked standings, I would give Mikiah Kreps very good odds to beat Sigolene Lefebvre,
Miyamoto,
or Tyson Gallagher. I would give Mikiah Kreps very good odds against any one of those fighters. And she's doing this all without a major promoter behind her, without a Matchroom, without a Queensbury, without a boxer, a Top Rank, a Golden Boy.
She's doing it.
Looking good doing it. The dark horse of the super bantamweight division, the great and talented fighter that not enough people are talking about, but when the time comes, they might, because she might surprise you.
28 years old, born and raised in Niagara Falls, New York.
With a very high ceiling, good, respectable power, athleticism, ring savvy, ring IQ, shot selection. She's good at a lot of things, and she's got a little bit of everything. Best described as a mid-range to inside boxer puncher, though not limited to boxing, mid-range to inside. She can do a bit of work from the outside as well. One of the better fighters anywhere at or around these weights.
Don't yet know who she's fighting and whether or not it'll be a step up from her last opponent, but she did face a former champion in her last fight, so she's coming up.
And what often heralds whether or not an up-and-coming talent is ready to challenge for an alphabet title is when they start fighting former champions. Mikiah did in her last fight, so she's almost ready.
See if she ends up fighting in the next one. We'll talk more about the fight as the fight date approaches.
In men's middleweight news, an update from the people over at Brunch Boxing who say Carlos Adames has not been allowed to enter the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. WBC middleweight champion Carlos Adames says he wasn't allowed to board his plane to Saudi because they won't allow him to enter Saudi. Adames is set to defend his middleweight title against Hamza Shiraz as part of Turkey El Al Sheikh's February 22nd Riyadh season event. Riyadh season event organizers did not approve Adames for entry into the kingdom for the customary 2 weeks out that most fighters use to acclimate to a country like Saudi. It must be noted that the lead promoter for the event is Shiraz's promoter, Frank Warren. Adames is represented by the PBC platform. Carlos Adames, in his own words, said, "I tried to board the plane to Saudi, but I am banned from getting on because they will not allow me to enter Saudi. My manager told me that they said I could not enter Saudi before the date they decided. My team bought our tickets on their own, and they let my team pass, but I cannot pass. I'm stranded, waiting at the Las Vegas airport."
In association with the story, Broadway Joel, who does a good job of keeping up with the Dominican boxing scene and those Dominican boxers, said, "According to my sources, Adames was not allowed on a plane to Saudi because he isn't permitted to enter until 9 days before his fight." 9 days, and we're a bit further out. He planned to arrive earlier to adjust to the time change, but was held up at the airport, even though other boxers like Thomas Dulorme and Luis Salazar were allowed to travel. The fight is expected to go on, but he won't be able to arrive as early as he originally intended.
We're about 15 to 16 days out from the fight date, out from the 22nd.
Adames cannot enter into the kingdom until 9 days out from the fight. That's
February 14th, Friday of next week, Valentine's Day.
fight week.
Which would give him 9 days to adjust. 9 days to acclimate, all things considered. I think it's much ado about nothing. No, it's not 2 weeks, but it's very close to it.
Just a few days shy of 2 weeks.
Now, I already had Hamza Shiraz winning the fight. I already felt that Hamza, he might be able to get this guy out of there. Hamza's a very big boy.
6'3" with a 75-inch wingspan at 160 pounds. Tantamount to a giant at that weight. Whereas Carlos Adames is a lot more modest sized, standing in at about 5'11", 73-inch wingspan, 30 years old. WBC champion.
Are they trying to sabotage him? Are they not allowing Carlos Adames into the kingdom a full 2 weeks out from the fight to improve Hamza's chances?
It's an overreaction. I think this is an overreaction.
That's saying that if Carlos goes in there and loses, it won't be because of this. No, it's not a full 14 days, but it's 9.
I think that's enough time to acclimate.
You think they're getting cold feet and getting their excuses ready?
It's one way to look at it.
But you often hear it said that fights are won and lost preemptively. Fights are won and lost in preparation, in the gym. And I don't think this is what stands in the way of Carlos and his victory, that if you lose, it's not going to be because of this.
I don't think.
So what you have in Carlos Adames is a seasoned fighter, more seasoned, more experienced than Hamza Shiraz at 154 and now at 160. He's faced the better quality of competition so far. He's been around the block more times.
And this little snafu doesn't change that.
Experience is on Carlos' side. Size and length is on Hamza Shiraz, who's got a piston-like jab and a very strong backhand. Stronger even than Carlos Adames' backhand, I think. The kind of height and length to make him a very difficult man to get close to, that in trying to close the distance, you're gonna come under heavy fire, and this was always the fight. That didn't change, and that's what matters. That's what's important. That's what you have to get ready for. And that doesn't change because you're not allowed to touch down 14 days out. 9 days.
You can touch down in 9 days. Till then, hold your horses.
So I see it. I feel that either man can hurt either man. I don't actually trust Carlos Adames' punch resistance, but I don't really trust Hamza's that much either.
Amir Khan vibes.
What separates them? I feel like Hamza has more momentum going in. He's been on a run of good form, looking impressive fight by fight, whereas Carlos, the last time I saw him, he was underwhelming.
Unimpressive.
Putting on a forgettable performance in June of last year opposite the ring, Terrell Gausha, what was the only fight that he had that year, and it was the same the year before that. He only fought once against Julian Williams. It's for that reason I give the edge in momentum to Hamza Shiraz,
who fought 3 times last year. 3 times the Carlos Adames has won.
All knockout wins, and currently he looks to be on a 15-fight knockout streak, that he's stopped his last 15 opponent,
Crawford.
And I think he might just knock out Carlos Adames. I remember many years ago, he was hurt. He was actually hurt by Patrick Teixeira.
At 154?
So who's to say that an even bigger guy and a bigger puncher in Hamza Shiraz can't do more than hurt him at 160? Who's to say Hamza doesn't knock him out?
That's the way I saw it beforehand, before this entire airport snafu. Though if it matters that much to you, I guess that's all the more reason to go with Hamza to win the fight than Carlos if you think that's what's going to decide the outcome.
If it's that important to you, I guess that's more reason to pick Hamza to win the fight instead of Carlos.
The middleweight division will be better off if Hamza is WBC champion than Carlos, who's been WBC champion for a while now, a little bit, and people still don't know him. He still doesn't have a big following. You need new blood, new faces in this division to shake things up. And middleweight will be better off if Hamza has the green and gold than Carlos.
This has been a dead division for a while now, and Carlos Adames, along with a few others, has been there the whole time. Him and Lara and Yanni Beck, them just going back and forth on social media but failing to put together a fight. Middleweight will be better off if the belt changes hands.
Yanni Beck is supposed to be having a homecoming fight for his next fight. Hopefully after that, he faces the winner of Adames versus Shiraz, who I think is going to be Hamza Shiraz.
Hopefully.
Something at 160's got to change. Otherwise, this is going to stay one of the most ignored weight classes in all of boxing.
Finally, veteran boxing scribe and media personality, the voluptuous Cynthia Kinte, said, "A little birdie told me Jake Paul versus Canelo is a done deal for May 3rd, Cinco de Mayo weekend in Vegas. Allegiant and T-Mobile Arena are the two possible venues. It will be co-promoted by MVP and PBC live on Netflix."
That's what I figured.
If Canelo were going to do a fight with Jake Paul, it wouldn't make much sense to do it on Amazon Prime when you can do it on Netflix, a media giant unto themselves, a giant platform that just hosted a very big boxing event between Jake Paul and Mike Tyson. And the people at Netflix are just as, if not more capable, of guaranteeing Canelo a sizable guarantee than the people at Amazon.
Just as, if not more capable.
Coincidentally, veteran boxing scribe Andy Purawal, who just spoke to Eddie Hearn. Eddie Hearn told him that based on what he heard, the fight is made. That fight between Jake and Canelo is all but done.
Done on all accounts.
What was it? 3 or 4 days ago that story broke that Jake Paul had entered the running for Canelo Alvarez's next fight, his very next fight in May. And when I talked about it in my previous video, I talked about how fiscally it makes entirely too much sense for Canelo to take on this novice, to take on this social media influencer, moonlighting as a boxer for a gigantic purse, a gigantic bag, the likes of which most boxers can only dream of earning for fighting someone so inexperienced, so unprepared.
Makes too much sense not to do it. Too much sense fiscally.
On the heels of news that the Terence Crawford fight has collapsed, and we still don't know why, veteran boxing scribe Keith Idek said, "For those of you who don't understand what's happening here, Canelo doesn't want to fight Terence Crawford either. Benavidez is bigger, younger, stronger, granite chin,
Really?
parentheses, that wasn't a knockdown, but unless something changes, why would he not want to fight a 37-year-old welterweight?"
Who says he's the one that doesn't want to fight, Keith?
Who said that what Canelo does or doesn't want is what caused this fight to collapse? We really don't know. And I don't think it's going to take long for the boxing scribes themselves to reach out for an official comment from either Turkey or Terence or Canelo. Keith Idek continued, "This is my last response because you always have questions and criticisms."
I do?
No, it's some guy that he was arguing with. "Never any answers or understanding that this is a process. Let this play out, and please pay attention as it unfolds. It isn't what you think. A fluid situation. Circle back when it's done." Whoever he was talking to likely won't, because these guys who like to jump the gun and come to their own conclusions.
When a story first breaks, they just want someone to argue with, someone to listen to their own knee-jerk reactions. They have the impulse control of a toddler, of a child.
It's not enough that they already made up their own minds as to what's going on with little to no information. They want someone to argue with about it. Go argue with your landlord, your mother, your mom.
Your girlfriend if you got one.
Keith continued, Riyadh season, MGM Resorts International & Co. don't have enough money and influence to pay UNLV to move a college football game that won't make pocket change for Allegiant Stadium? Oh, and Mark Davis is a huge boxing fan that comes to a lot of fights in town. Keep guessing.
Was that a rhetorical question?
That's what it looked like to me. And the baseline of what Keith is saying is the situation is fluid, ever-changing, so don't rush to assumption. But that's a lot to ask when you're asking a boxing fan.
Keith Idek asked, why wouldn't Canelo want to fight a 37-year-old Terence Crawford?
That was a rhetorical question. The inference you can make is that maybe Canelo's not the one to blame here. Maybe it's something else entirely. But because the situation is fluid, don't rush to assumption. Be patient.
Somebody ought to tell Rick Glacier that.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier, who said there's boxing social media rumors that are totally false, saying Terence Crawford is the one that pulled out of a potential Canelo fight. Crawford didn't pull out. Warriors want fights to happen, not look for a reason not to make a fight happen. And Terence Crawford is a real warrior.
Well, I'm glad you think so, Rick, but that sounds like little more than just an opinion, not inside intel as to what's going on the inside.
It sounds like you, like a lot of other people, have already made up your mind that you're gonna make this Canelo's fault before any of us know what's going on, and none of us do, not yet.
While rumors are swirling that Jake Paul will be Canelo's next opponent.
I had a guy who goes by the name Ascended Master call it nasty work, that Canelo may be fighting Jake Paul in his next fight, to which I queried, how so? Crawford wasn't supposed to be until September anyway. Canelo fighting Jake Paul in May.
I don't even know that has anything to do with the Crawford fight, because Crawford wasn't going to be next.
Crawford was never going to be Canelo Alvarez's opponent for May. Every single report about that fight indicated Canelo would fight him in September, not May. So Canelo fighting Jake in May...
Apples to oranges.
To which the Ascended Master replied, as of now, we don't know a date associated with this travesty. Just that the Bud fight is now off with this bullshit being almost done.
Pues los rivales son los mismos. Crawford está sonando para septiembre o para mayo. Ya también está por ahí Jake Paul. Todo lo que sea negociable y pueda hacer lo mejor para la carrera de Saúl es lo que se va.
That's Eddie Reynoso himself on camera saying that the rivals are the same. Terence Crawford in September and potentially Jake Paul in May. Next thing you know, you're going to be complaining to me that he said it in Spanish and not English.
Let me stop you right there.
I'm not going to apologize because you only speak one language and I can speak two. That's tantamount to apologizing for me being smarter than you.
Why are you mad?
Canelo fighting Jake Paul in May may have absolutely nothing to do with the Crawford fight's collapse because he was never going to fight Crawford in May. It's not complicated. Every single report detailing the potentiality of a Crawford fight had it set aside for September, not May. So hold your horses and pump the brakes.
So if you're one of these people who already made up your mind how you're gonna feel, what the hell are you telling me for?